Hey guys, so like the title of this video suggests, this is going to be a video talking all about the interesting lore behind the Demon's Edge. I actually made this video because some of the future videos that I'm going to make is kinda connected to the lore of the Demon's Edge. So I made this video so that I don't have to repeat the same thing again and again in those videos or any other future videos that might refer to the Demon's Edge. But as I found more and more lore behind the Demon's Edge, I knew I made the right choice by making a standalone video for the Demon's Edge. So without further ado, let's begin. The Demon's Edge backstory comes from three sources, and that is from the in-game lore of the Demon's Edge item, the additional lore of the Demon's Shard cosmetic, and from the RV Heroes Yet comic. So let's piece them together to get the full story of this one-of-a-kind weapon that can only be wielded by heroes. And believe me, there's a very good reason to why the Demon's Edge is like this. Here it says that when the Mad Moon shattered and the Ancients fell into the Dota 2 planet, the splinters of the Nemesis stones lay scattered. Okay, for those of you who don't know, the Nemesis stones refer to two types of stones called the Radiant Ore and the Dire Stone, and I'll talk about them in detail in the upcoming videos. But for the sake of this video, all you need to know is that there are two types of stones that fell from the Mad Moon when it shattered, and these two types of stones represent the Radiant and the Dire Ancients, and thus hate each other, hence why they are called the Nemesis stones. Okay, with that knowledge, let's continue. Here it says that the demon smith named Obsidian used both of the Nemesis stones to create the Demon's Edge. He forged the blade with Radiant Ore and carved the hilt with Dire Stone. But when he tried to test the blade, Obsidian slew himself. I think this was a result of him trying to make these two Nemesis stones into one thing, because it says here that within this single weapon, the Ancients are fighting each other. So I think the Nemesis stones in this blade mind-controlled Obsidian and made him kill himself, just like how the Ancients mind-control heroes in-game to fight for them in the Battle of the Ancients. So this means Obsidian's death was the revenge of the Nemesis stones that made up the Demon's Edge on the person who forcefully forged them into one blade. I'll talk about how these ancient stones actually mind control heroes in the upcoming videos, so you guys can go check out those videos to get more information on this matter if you like. But since this video is about the Demon's Edge, let's get back to the Demon's Edge lore. Here it says that only heroes can safely wield the Demon's Edge without killing themselves. This could be because the power of the two materials existing in one blade nullifies each other so much so that the Nemesis stones in this blade cannot effectively mind control heroes like the Ancients. Or maybe the blade just fights over who should control the hero. However, the Demon's Edge have enough power to corrupt non-heroes, because in this comic we see that Scythiel and Querd get transformed into the Radiant and the Dire Creeps when they each touch the two different types of Nemesis stones in the Demon's Edge. On a side note, there is a possibility that the reason why Scythiel and Querd got transformed in this comic is because the Radiant Ore blade and the Dire Stone hilt that made up the Demon's Edge was separated, and thus both of them were exposed to the full corrupting power of each of the Nemesis stones. I say this because after the Demon's Edge reassembled, Querd picked up the Demon's Edge and his corruption disappeared, while Scythiel stayed corrupted as a Radiant Creep because he didn't get to hold the reassembled Demon's Edge, and later on Querd could also wield the Demon's Edge without turning into a creep. This proves that the two Nemesis stones existing in one blade does nullify their effects. All of these attributes make the Demon's Edge a really powerful and a dangerous weapon. This is probably the reason why the Demon's Edge is the only known weapon forged by incorporating both of the Nemesis stones into one weapon, because this combination of the two opposite ancients is too unstable, and its creator Obsidian only learned his lesson when he was killed by his own creation. Okay, now let's talk about some other interesting stuff that are related to the Demon's Edge. First off, there's an interesting connection between the lane creeps and the Demon's Edge. You see, the base damage of melee lane creeps is between 19 and 23, and we can assume that the base damage is the damage of their weapons. I say this because mega creeps and range creeps have more damage than melee creeps, because the former is an enhanced version of a creep while the latter uses magical projectiles to attack. So this means the base damage of the melee creeps is equal to the damage of their weapons, and it is said that the weapons of the lane creeps is made out of their respective element of Radiant Ore and Dire Stone, and we know that the Demon's Edge is a combination of Radiant Ore and Dire Stone. So if we add the base damage of each of these melee lane creeps together, we get 38 to 46 damage, which is very close to the damage range that the Demon's Edge always had throughout the years of being an item in game according to its changelogs. I don't know whether this is an intentional thing or a coincidence, but it's a pretty interesting connection if you ask me. And then I found something interesting about Obsidian, the Demon Smith. You see, the name Obsidian comes from the word obsidian, which is a black volcanic rock that is relatively hard, but it can shatter similar to a glass, and when it does, it reveals a reflective surface inside, while also creating really sharp edges. This is why obsidian is commonly known as volcanic glass, and because of all these properties, it is commonly used for weapons in the past. I think all the properties of this obsidian rock kinda outlines Obsidian's character. You might not believe me, but let me explain. The fact that obsidian originates from volcanoes is kinda like a reference to Obsidian, who is a demon originating from the depths of hell. The black color of obsidian also might refer to its demonic nature, and the fact that obsidian rocks were used to create weapons might refer to the fact that Obsidian creates weapons because he's a smith. The fact that obsidian shatters like a glass is like a metaphor for Obsidian's mind, which was shattered by the Nemesis stone's influence. And like I said before, when obsidian shatters, it reveals a reflective surface inside with sharp edges. This might refer to the fact that when Obsidian's mind was shattered, it revealed his ultimate fate of killing himself with the sharp blade of the Demon's Edge. I know this might be like an overanalysis of his character, but I couldn't help but notice these connections, and I think this interpretation that I came up with is pretty interesting, so I wanted to share it with you guys. But anyways, then we have a pretty interesting connection regarding the whole story of the Demon's Edge, because the story about the Demon's Edge sounds a lot like the story behind Frostmourne, which is a weapon in Warcraft 3, and Frostmourne was a weapon that corrupted Prince Arthas and warped his mind so much that he became an evil Death Knight for the Lich King. And the reason why the Frostmourne blade was able to do all this is because the power of the Lich King was imbued in this Frostmourne blade, just like how the Demon's Edge have fragments of the Ancients within itself. Speaking of the Ancients, the model that the Dire used back in Dota 1 in Warcraft 3 was the Lich King's throne, which is why to this day the Ancients are sometimes referred to as the throne. And there's a very interesting reason to why there's this connection between these two weapons, and that is because the icon for the Frostmourne blade was the same icon that the Demon's Edge item used back in Dota 1. And what's more is that there were two unused quest items for Warcraft called the Hilt of Frostmourne and the Fragment of Frostmourne. Although these two items weren't really implemented into the game, the fact that they once existed is interesting, because we do know that the Demon's Edge can also be separated into two pieces, and that is the hilt and the blade, just like these two items. Now that I think about it, this might be a nice build up for the Demon's Edge if they ever decide to make the Demon's Edge into an upgrades category item. But anyways, this is why the Demon's Edge in Dota 2 is so similar to the Frostmourne in Warcraft 3, because they are more or less the same blade. On a side note, the model of Prince Arthas was used for Omni Knight back in Dota 1, and the model of the Death Knight Arthas was used for Abaddon back in Dota 1, who replaced his hammer with Frostmourne. This is probably the reason why Abaddon's in-game sword looks a bit like Frostmourne. And because of Abaddon's connection to Frostmourne, I think it's a good idea to give an immortal weapon based around the Demon's Edge for Abaddon. But sadly I found that there's already a cosmetic item for Abaddon based on the Demon's Edge. And what's more is that I also found that Abaddon already have an immortal weapon, which I was surprised I didn't know about this before. But I soon found out why I didn't know about it and why it was overlooked. Because his current immortal weapon doesn't look anything like an immortal item. I mean, its custom animations are barely visible. I know this is probably because this immortal item was released a long time ago, but even this legendary set for Abaddon have more effects than Abaddon's immortal weapon. So after taking all of these factors into consideration, I think it's a good idea to give Abaddon a new immortal weapon based on the Frostmourne blade from Warcraft 3 with an icy black fog-like theme. I mean, the reason why Abaddon's passive even has a chilling effect in the first place is because Frostmourne was his weapon back in Dota 1, and Frostmourne, like its name suggests, was an ice-themed weapon because the Lich King, who was the original lord of the weapon, was literally encased in a throne made out of ice. Because the Lich King is associated with ice, you might think that the Lich we see in game is also related to the Lich King. And you are right, because back in the Warcraft 3 campaign, there was a character named Kel'Thuzad and his title was the Lich. And back in Dota 1, Lich was directly based on this character, and Kel'Thuzad was like the right-hand man of the Lich King, who carried out the Lich King's will, while the Lich King was literally chilling in his frozen throne. And now that I think about it, all of this sounds a lot like another franchise, and that is the Lord of the Rings franchise. I mean, in all of these three cases, there's a very powerful entity or entities who exist in a building-like form, and there's an item that contains this entity's essence, and whoever possesses this item get influenced and corrupted by this item because of the power of the entity that resides within this said item. So there's clearly a connection here, and I'm pretty sure that all of this isn't just a mere coincidence. And that's the lore behind the Demon's Edge. Isn't it exciting to see all of these hidden stories behind an item that we always knew about? Let me know what you guys think about the things that I talked about in this video in the comment section down below, because I would love to know what you guys think about all this. And also guys, go check out the other videos that I mentioned in this video if you haven't watched them yet, especially the Ancient Stones videos, because those videos and this video are kinda connected. So I'll leave the links for all of the related videos in the description box below, so you guys can check them out if you like. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and as always, don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and turn on notifications for more videos like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.